Let us unravel this whole secrecy, this whole mystery around the direct sale, direct purchase program of the NNPC DSDP. Let's unravel it and use it to explain to you that there is no such thing as fuel subsidy, that the fuel subsidy is a fraud. It is organized crime, according to Buhari and according to Peter Obi and several other Nigerians out there. So I titled this presentation that I used to capture some key parts of the document, and then the full parts of the document will be left to you in the description below for you to download and peruse. Not so bulky, but 90-page, 3 pages document, 2 separate documents. Let's do this. These 2 documents that we're presenting to you for now were obtained legally. But to protect our sources and to protect our case in court eventually, we have redacted some portion of it. But the documents will fully be available to you to download in the description below. See the links therein. Like I said, we're presenting 2 documents. Number 1 is the NNPC's invitation to tender document. And then the second one is the NNPC's contract agreement, or what they call term sheet for the direct sale, direct purchase DSDP program. So these 2 documents will dive into it and use it to dispel this notion that some people are pushing out there, that there's something called subsidy that government can no longer sustain. It's all not true. And the reason I'm bringing out these 2 documents now, we could easily have kept them for our court case if the government refused to do the right thing alongside NNPC. But I'm bringing out, we're dishing out these 2 documents for one purpose and one purpose only. For those of you out there who are still on the fence, thinking could it be just conspiracy theory or not? Because many people in the comment section, many people even approach me and they say it is all conspiracy theory, that it is not true. But with these 2 documents only, there are others. With these 2 documents only, I will prove to you beyond reasonable doubt that there is indeed no such thing as subsidy. Just these 2 documents, and they are NNPC documents. Like I said, a portion or some portions of the second document, the term sheets or the contract agreement, some portions of it have been redacted to protect our sources and eventually our case when we do go to court. So if you think it's still a conspiracy case, wait until we serve you. This is the invitation to tender, the first document, 3 pages or thereabout. Second document, 90+ pages. It's the contract agreement, the term sheet. The term sheet, contract agreement that contains the contract details, terms and conditions for the DSDP program. The first document, which is actually the invitation to tender document out there in the public domain, the first document has a brief description of the DSDP scope, and in it NNPC says that they will lift, NNPC shall deliver monthly crude oil lifting on free on board basis to supplier, who shall in return deliver petroleum products at Nigerian standard specification to NNPC on delivered at place basis DAP at designated safe ports in Nigeria. Note, the petroleum products to be delivered shall be the equivalent in value to the crude oil received from NNPC, subject to the general terms and conditions as would be advised to successful companies subsequently via the term sheet or the contract agreement. Now, in the second document, which is the contract agreement, which is the term sheet, the opening pages of it talks about this very, very basic foundation of the DSDP program. 1. NNPC desires to deliver crude oil on FOB basis to the consortium and receive in return from consortium petroleum products based on the value of the crude oil delivered. Consortium represents that it is engaged in the business of petroleum refining and trading, and has the technical skills, financial, and logistic capacity to lift crude oil and deliver petroleum products to NNPC on DAP basis at designated ports. So the foundation of this whole DSDP thing is trade by barter. I gave you $1 billion worth of crude oil. You give me $1 billion worth of refined products. Yes. So what is the gain for the refinery or the consortium? We'll look into that very shortly. But that is the foundation. It's trade by barter. From the definitions that we have seen of what the DSDP is, from the invitation to tender, which is the first document, and the second document, which is the term sheet or the contract agreement, the definition we have seen, 6 things should come out very quickly at you that you should take note of. Number 1 is the fact that crude oil will be delivered to the supplier. Crude oil will be delivered to the supplier. How NNPC gets that crude oil, we'll look into it. That's the cost for NNPC. Free on board. What does it mean? Petroleum products. What are they? Direct at place. What is it? Crude oil value equals petroleum product value. That is the whole essence of the DSDP arrangement. And then we'll look into the fine details of the term sheet, which is the contract agreement, and see how all of this will help us remove this whole mystery, dismantle it, the whole mystery surrounding the DSDP program, and this whole talk about there being something called subsidy. There is no subsidy. If the government, through NNPC, is giving its crude oil that it's supposed to refine locally but cannot refine for whatever reasons best known to them, which we'll look into, takes its crude oil and gives it to a consortium that is made up of a refinery company and a distributor company. Now the refinery takes the crude oil, gives us back refined products. That's the basis of this whole DSDP thing. So no money is paid to anyone on both sides. We'll look at the details. Direct at place, what does it mean? The contract agreement. All right, so why DSDP? The whole essence of DSDP is because NNPC wants to engage qualified and credible companies in a direct sale of crude oil and a direct purchase of petroleum product, DSDP, to ensure sustained product supply in Nigeria. That's the whole essence. What companies qualify for DSDP? There are 3 categories, but I'll just walk you through one that sums up the whole scam nature of the subsidy regime, or that sums it up. Yeah, let's leave it at that. An established international end user who owns a refinery. Yeah, that's it. With the capacity to process Nigerian crude oil grades and has a Nigerian affiliate, the Nigerian counterpart. This is the second portion of it. That is experienced in downstream oil and gas business and in partnership with experienced Nigerian company engaged in downstream oil and gas business. That's the second category. I won't bore you with that. That's the third category. Before we go on, you recall that the basis of this whole, if you come back to the definition of the DSDP in this slide, you discover that the consortium represents that it is engaged in the business of petroleum refining and trading and has the technical skill, the financial skill, and the logistics capacity to lift crude oil and deliver petroleum products. That's the basis of it. So on that basis now, it means that a refinery is involved in the consortium. Now, there are several refineries, about 15 of them form the consortium. 15 consortia. Consortia is the plural of consortium. Yeah. 15 consortia, and each of the consortium each of the consortia is made up of a refinery and a local oil marketer. Sometimes it's just made up of local oil marketer. But the biggest of the refineries in the consortium that NNPC is engaging with in this DSDP program include the likes of Shell, ExxonMobil, Vitol, BP, Governor, Total, Esso, and so on. We'll see them very shortly. Now, this is also public knowledge. This is not part of any of the two documents that we have released. This is public knowledge. It's out there. Just do a Google search for the companies that were successful for the DSDP program. You'll see it there. And even in the information that was released by NNPC, it says that you see offtake of crude oil and in return deliver corresponding petroleum products equivalent in value to the NNPC. Equivalent in value. This is NNPC's own release. This is NNPC's own release. Now, these are the successful companies. You see them there. The top refiner at number 1, BP Oil, partnering with AYM Shafa for local distribution. Vitol Refinery, partnering with Carlson Hyson. Total Refinery, partnering with Total for local distribution. Governor International Refinery, partnering with Mele Kyari Oil and Gas for local distribution. Trafigura Refinery, partnering with AA Rano, local distribution. And on like that. But you have the likes of MRS Oil and Gas. You have the like of Duke Oil Company Incorporated that are just interested in the distribution part of the whole deal. Now let's look at the second document, which is the term sheet or the contract agreement. This is the opening page. Whereas NNPC desires to deliver crude on FOB basis to the consortium and receive in return from the consortium petroleum product based on the value of crude oil delivered through DSDP arrangement. That says it all. That it is trade by barter. I give you crude oil, you give me refined petrol. That's all. I give you crude oil, FOB. FOB means that NNPC extracts the crude oil through its exploration partners, which incidentally, some of them happen to be the refineries, to shock you. And some of them also happen to be the shipping companies. But let's get into this detail. Let's not go into that yet. Now, NNPC brings out or extracts the crude oil with its refining or exploration partners, transfers that crude to the terminals at its loading point, NNPC terminals, where the consortium or the refinery will bring their ships or their vessels to collect the crude oil. Now, NNPC, based on this agreement, is only obligated to spend money to extract the crude oil, which it does in partnership with its exploration partners, extract the crude oil, transport the crude oil to the loading port at FOB point, Bonny and Lagos. Once the crude oil is loaded onto the ship at FOB Nigerian Loading Terminal, the cost of transportation, the cost of shipping, the cost of refining is not the business of NNPC, it's the business of the refinery. The cost of insurance, the cost of demurrage, they are not the responsibility of NNPC. With some exceptions though. They are not the responsibility of NNPC, but the responsibility of the consortium. Yeah, this is the NNPC document that we're looking at. And then the consortium, of course, is made up of two parts. One part is the refinery, the other part, like I said, is the local company. This is NNPC document, the agreement they have with the consortium, the refinery and the distributors. That's what I'm reading to you. So those of you are saying it's a conspiracy theory, I'm reading to you real documents, and the links to those documents are in the description below. Furthermore, it says that the consortium further agrees to deliver to NNPC petroleum product quantity based on the value of crude oil delivered on such terms that are set out herein in this NNPC agreement. And like I said, it is FOB. You see the direct at place, Lagos, and direct at place, Bonny, where is designated at the DAP locations, the discharge port, where the refined petroleum products will be displayed. What products are the refinery supposed to give back to us? Only three. PMS, which is petrol, DPK, which is aviation fuel, and then gas oil, which is diesel. Now recall that when you refine crude oil, you get other components. You get bitumen, you get materials for chemical industries, you get plastic, you get gases, you get all manner of things. But the refineries do not give NNPC back those. They only give NNPC these three. So that is their own profit. So they refine, give us back these three components, and they hold back the remaining components, which they can sell to other countries, sell to other people, even sell to Nigeria, and make their money. Because normally, without this DSDP program, these refineries that we mentioned before will still buy crude oil from other countries and refine and sell. But with this DSDP, they don't have to spend their money, as we will see very, very shortly. Now, each of these cargo is this. Each of the petroleum product cargo is delivered by Consortium in one lot using the MIR vessel. You see the description of them in the next slide, and that's what the slide we're looking at. You have the medium range vessel, you have the long range one vessel, you have the long range two vessel. The medium range takes between 30 and 40,000 metric tons, and that is 30 million liters, because one metric ton is 1,000 liters. So 30,000 times 1,000 is 30 million liters. That's the medium range vessel, MR. LR1 is about 60 million liters. LR2 is about 120 million liters. The quantities of petroleum product to be delivered by the consortium under this agreement shall be determined by the value of crude oil received, establishing the same thing again. In fact, those people who wrote this agreement on the part of the NNPC, I must give them credit. They are very smart individuals. Contrary to what people like Femi Otedola said, Nigerian government can be serious business people if they want to. If they choose not to be corrupt, they can do fantastic business. For Femi Otedola to actually make the statement that he made is actually technically just painting all our civil service as Dundees, which I know they are not. I've worked with some very fantastically intelligent civil servants in Nigeria, and I know that they are very smart and very brilliant. This agreement of the NNPC, this DSDP agreement, is a proof and testament to the fact that there are intelligent people in our civil service, in our public service. There are intelligent people. The only problem is corruption. Very, very brilliantly put agreement. Everywhere it is specified that, look, we are giving you crude oil. You give us the refined petroleum product that is equal to the value of the crude oil that we give to you. It kept stating it. Consortium shall pay NNPC the applicable price for the total quantity of each cargo as stated in the bill of lading on dated Brent-related basis and certificates of quantity and quality issued pursuant to the provisions of the contract. Now, the price shall be expressed in the United States dollars per barrel FOB Nigerian loading terminal. That is, NNPC's obligation is to extract the crude oil from the ground and load the crude oil into the shipping vessels of the consortium at the accepted port, which is Bonny and Lagos, or any other port for that matter, any other terminal. Now you see, when NNPC gives the consortium the crude oil cargo, the consortium is supposed to pay back with refined petroleum. Now, when NNPC gives the consortium crude oil and the consortium lifts the crude oil, NNPC will give the consortium an invoice. But the purpose of that invoice is to establish the price value of the crude oil that the NNPC is giving to the consortium, to the refinery. The invoice is not for the refinery to pay them cash. It's not. The NNPC gives them that invoice, which represents 100% of the value of the crude oil delivered. Now, the value of the petroleum products and the value of the crude oil lifted shall be determined and reconciled by both parties. The payment is guaranteed two ways. So the arrangement is simple. It's a trade by barter, but we still have to calculate the value of the crude oil that NNPC gives to the consortium. And we also need to also calculate the value of the refined petrol product that the consortium gives back to NNPC. And there has to be a guarantee that if NNPC gives crude oil to the consortium, if the consortium fails to pay back with refined petrol product, then does NNPC run at a loss? The answer is no. The transaction is guaranteed by what they call irrevocable revolving standby letter of credit. Yes. So NNPC supplies the consortium crude oil, and then the consortium pays back with refined products. Or if the consortium fails, then the NNPC will fall back to the standby letter of credit. Engagement of NIDA's vessel for affreightment. Now, inside that agreement that NNPC has with the consortium, they put in there that since NNPC is supplying crude oil FOB, and it is the responsibility of the consortium to ship, refine, and give them back refined products, NNPC also now put a clause, because NNPC also has a shipping company, put a clause in there to say that 50% of the crude that the consortium lifts, that NNPC gives to them, must be lifted or shipped with NNPC's own Nidas Marine Limited. So, in addition to the fact that NNPC does not pay for the refining, does not pay for shipping the product to be refined, does not pay for the insurance, does not pay for anything after it has loaded the crude oil into the ship, NNPC goes on to also try to make money from forcing the consortium to use their own Nidas Marine Limited to ship at least 50% of the crude oil and the refined products that they are bringing back. So that way NNPC makes extra money. Now, like we said, the letter of credit that the companies provide, they provide that letter of credit not to serve as payment, really. They provide that letter of credit as security in case if NNPC gives crude oil to the consortium, refineries, and the refinery fails to give them back refined petrol products, then they will fall back to the standby letter of credit. And we should note one thing here, that the letter of credit is issued not by any Nigerian bank. It's issued by international bank, the likes of JP Morgan Chase. That's the international bank that issues such letters of credit. And we're talking about companies like British Petroleum, we're talking about companies like Shell, ExxonMobil, Vitol. These are international companies, they have all the dollars. So they are not going to source for dollar. These all talk about, oh, they are sourcing for dollar to bring in. It's simply not true. Because the big refineries, who coincidentally, some of them happen to also be the ones that are helping us explore or extract the crude oil from the ground. They have all the dollars. And they are not giving NNPC letter of credit from Nigerian bank. It's from reputable international banks in which NNPC also have accounts. Like we all know NNPC has accounts in JP Morgan Chase. So if one of the refineries, say Shell, has an account with JP Morgan Chase, they just go to JP Morgan Chase, gets this revolving irrevocable standby letter of credit at the beginning of the contract, because this contract is for 12 months and it's renewable by NNPC afterwards. So at the beginning of the 12-month duration of this contract for this DSDP program, the consortium or the refinery component of the consortium gets a letter of credit, and it's just one. That is the one that will be revolving, because it's only meant to be used as a fallback if the consortium fails to provide the equivalent value of refined petrol products that is equivalent to the crude oil that they got from NNPC. If they fail, then NNPC will go back and draw upon the letter of credit. But aside that, they continue to revolve it. It continues to be used shipment after shipment after shipment, as long as both parties are holding on to their obligations. I give you crude oil, you give me refined petrol product. That's all. Once they provide the letter of credit, which the international oil refineries provide, the letter of credit, from international bank, not from any bank in Nigeria, from international bank. Once they get that letter of credit, the money is not taken by NNPC. It's just meant to be a safeguard in case they don't ship refined product. And of course, they ship refined product. At the end of every 3 months, they will reconcile their accounts. At the end of every 4 months, they will reconcile and determine, oh, I gave you so amount of crude oil at the crude oil price of $87 per barrel or $90 per barrel. Multiply it, this how much is what. You gave me so liters of refined petrol product at so price. We multiply it to get the value and say, oh, okay, we see that your value is equal to mine, so nobody owes anybody, let's continue. Or yours is more than mine, then I owe you more crude oil. Not that I will pay you in cash, no. Or yours, the refined product is less than the crude oil, so you need to bring in more refined product. That is the reconciliation that they hold. Not that the NNPC will draw on the standby, irrevocable, and revolving letter of credit from an international bank anyway. And then we need to talk about some charges here. Shipping. You see, here it specifies in Article 15 of it that all the charges from foreign local charges, harbor, wharfage, shipping dues payable at loading point, discharge point, including Nigerian Maritime Safety Agency dues, jetty fees, and terminal charges, all shall be borne by the consortium. And it doesn't even end there. The consortium shall at all times indemnify NNPC against any liability and expense which may be incurred by NNPC by reason of consortium's failure to pay all applicable taxes, fees, charges, and levies. So you see that the bulk of the responsibilities is on the consortium, and understandably so, because the crude oil that NNPC is giving to them, they are only getting 3 components of the refined product. The other components of the refined product, the consortium keeps for themselves. That is their own gain. In addition to the fact that they also gain other things too. They are the owners of the shipping vessels. They are the owner of the exploration. They are just leveraging their existing infrastructure. There is no liquidity. There is no motion, no dollar movement. Everything is just trade by barter. I'm reading from NNPC's document here now. For those of you who are calling it conspiracy theory, this is dissecting NNPC's own document. First, it was the invitation to tender, and now it is the NNPC's term sheet or the contract agreement that specifies the terms and conditions of how the DSDP program will run. That's what I'm reading for. And I've left link in case you don't have access to it. Although we have redacted some portion of the contract agreement to protect our sources. But we do have more evidence, much more than this. The essence is to dispel this rumor that this is a conspiracy theory, or to dispel the rumor that there is actually a fuel subsidy. There's no fuel subsidy. No fuel subsidy at all. NNPC does not pay for anything in cash as far as the refined product is concerned. The only thing it pays for is to pay for extracting the crude oil, which it does with the likes of them, Shell and Co., which are his exploration partner. And then, of course, they talk about the production cost, which we'll talk about later. Production costs can vary. You can have $30 production cost. You can have $10. You can have $4. You can have $15. Depends. And then I gave an estimate. I said, okay, let's even assume it's $30, which is high. And even if you say it's $40, which is also high, you'll still see that the landing cost of fuel, according to this direct sale, direct purchase arrangement, is 80-90 naira per liter. 80-90 naira per liter. So we talked about the reconciliation. And then, of course, in further sections, I told you that the people at NNPC that drew this agreement, they are really smart people. All across, they kept sprinkling it. In Article 14, you saw it there. The consortium shall be responsible for the payment of all taxes and charges imposed by the government and the agents and government agency in connection with delivery of crude oil to the consortium at the load point and crude oil after the crude oil passes to the vessel flange, and petroleum product at the discharge port in Nigeria before the petroleum product passes to the vessel flange. So the crude oil, after it passes, after they have loaded it onto the ship of the consortium, then the charges and taxes and everything is the responsibility of the consortium. And while they are shipping it back, the charges and the taxes and everything is the responsibility of the consortium before NNPC takes custody of it into their store tanks. So you see that the only cost to NNPC is the cost of production, the cost of getting out the crude oil. So they get out the crude oil, they give it to the consortium, they get fuel in return. Now, when they get this fuel in return, that is when the likes of AYM Shafa, AA Rano, Total, MRS Oil, and all the others, Duke Oil, that's when they come in. NNPC now sells this refined petrol product to the independent marketers, the major marketers. And at this point, it is an all Nigerian thing. It is local within Nigeria, and it's transaction in Naira. Transaction in Naira. At this point, the responsibility of the international partners, they are concluded, because the responsibility is you give them crude oil, they refine for you, they bring back FOB, DAP.